So, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for taking the time. I understand how busy everybody is, so I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So, the TrustWorks Privacy Community, we host monthly roundtable discussions where you can actively get involved in the conversation. So, if you would like to join the community, reach out to me directly, or there should be a link somewhere here in the post to actually join us. So today I am delighted to welcome Luke Beckley. For those of you who don't already know him, Luke is DPO and Head of Privacy and Data Governance for Correla, and also Chief Compliance Officer for Hope4. Welcome, Luke. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be back. Lovely to be back chatting with you as well, as always. Thank you.
Indeed. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion last week. I really did. And I really think that we touched on a lot of topics that would resonate with most, if not all, privacy professionals. So one of the key things that we did talk about was how, I suppose, a main challenge that most, if not all, privacy teams face is they find out about projects and initiatives within the organization when it's almost too late. It's either, that last minute panic where we're just about to go live and I need the go ahead, or, well, we've already gone live and then you find out. So it certainly looks as if, employees in general are trying to avoid this step for whatever reason. What do you think might be the reason for this?
I think, we've got a bit of bad press. I think we've always had a bad press and a bit of bad image. So there's and I can say that I think I can safely say that as being part of the privacy community and living it. So I'm not saying something from a kind of I just observe kind of view, but I think the problem has been, and something that I've held true for quite some time, is that we're seen as this kind of like someone who's just going to say no, and we're going to put kind of these restrictions on how we progress the project, whether the project can go ahead or not, whether what we're attempting to do is within the regulation. Sometimes it's not, and we do have to say that word, but that's not our starting point. And I think there's an education piece required to try and get us to be believed that we actually do want to drive kind of innovation and projects, and we want to see success, but we end up kind of not being viewed in that way. And it's just it's a very unfortunate scenario that we still find ourselves in. So I think it's predominantly that. Potentially as well our titles don't help, but we can get into that a bit in a sec, no doubt.
So we know obviously that this step is crucial. We need each department to come through the privacy team when they're launching a project or initiative. So what do you think we can do to try and actually change this or bridge this gap?
I think there's two things for me, right? One is talk to people, is actually just get in front of the different teams, circulate yourself around the organization, become known as someone that you can go to talk about the particular data issues that people are, part of their projects or part of their BAU. And there's a training and an awareness thing. I think too often organizations, again, it's a checkbox exercise, right? So we've got to do a checkbox, so we'll do a DPIA and rush through it and not do it do it as with the path of least resistance. It's not really taking into account what needs to be done. And it's the same with training and awareness, right? There's a requirement for us to do that. Annually seems to be an acceptable time frame in which that to be conducted or refreshed, but actually it's not. There's so many changes. Case law is testing the legislation and the regulation, obviously, almost daily. And so new guidance is coming out, new ways of actually thinking about what you need to do and how you need to implement those things. Mm-hmm. And so the training and awareness needs to keep up with that. So, and driving that and trying to get people to understand how best to use data and to do it within, the regulatory frameworks that are applicable. Is part of our PR exercise. I think we need to treat that as part of our PR armory to change people's what we do and who we are.
So when you talk about PR armory, so what kind of skills are you talking about? So we all know, obviously, to be a privacy professional, there are a lot of skills that you need, but specifically focusing on the PR side of things.
Well, it's getting to know each area of that, but for me, it's getting to know each area of that business and actually genuinely digging into understanding what it is they're trying to achieve. And so you almost embed yourself as part of the team rather than being an external factor that they need to kind of put on a risk register somewhere because you're bound to say no at some point. And becoming part of that core team, which I know is not easy because we've still got to try and get there at the start of things, but it happens. I've been involved in those where I've been in at the start, and the kind of smoothness of how that project ran and the delivery at the met both my requirement from a data protection perspective and are we meeting our obligations, and equally gave the output to that particular sales team as it was at the time in order for them to meet their objectives. So it's kind of learning their language. It's trying to understand what it is what they're trying to drive, what they want to achieve, and how you can be part of that team and contribute in a positive way to the final outcome.
So it's really taking it from the other's perspective, if you like. It's not coming in showing, what you know and what you're not telling or asking them to do anything, but rather the opposite. You're coming in kind of trying to get a real understanding of where they're coming from, what they're trying to achieve, and how you can help them to achieve that by taking also, privacy and data protection requirements into consideration.
Exactly that. It's a lot easier to go in asking to be taught than to do the teaching, I think. Right? So if I go in and say, I don't really understand how this process is working and what it is that you're trying to achieve, so educate me. I really want to help. And, we'll get onto the skill sets, I guess, in a second. But, most of the data protection, not all of them, have got a lot of additional, we'll call them hard skills, because we'll talk about that in a second. Project management, business analysis, data analysis, stakeholder management, change management, all of those kind of hard skills in their armory to kind of help support the project or the process that's currently underway. And so explaining that and demonstrating that provides that affinity, provides that connection, shows that you're not just a no person, and then you're suddenly part of the team rather than, again, this line on a risk register highlighted in red.
And I suppose, like, the reality of it is the collaboration across the organization is necessary. I mean, you can't do it without everybody, having some level of involvement. And this is a conversation we actually had a few months back on a live session where we talked about this, that it's not just, as you mentioned, about the hard skills, but in actual fact, it comes down to being a people person. It comes down to relating to the other people in the organization to get their collaboration. So some of the soft skills, for example, that you would say that have worked for you, let's say, when you've had to reach out to other departments.
Well, I mean, empathy and just listening and understanding, right? The three crucial ones for me, showing that you are prepared to hear their worlds to a degree, and somehow be able to relate them to experiences that you've had. There's a vulnerability, empathy element there. Suddenly that kind of endears you to the team and shows that you actually care and are understanding. But equally, just switching your ears on and listening to what is being said, and then being able to replay it in the format and process that is currently underway, so relating it to what the tasks and what you're doing. And it was really interesting. So we kind of went into our session last week thinking it was all going to be a discussion about, like, we'll call the hard skill sets. We go about applying those hard skills to the project, and actually I don't think anybody mentioned them. It kind of evolved from when I first did the presentation with my wonderful friend Claire Patterson, and partner in crime for that, and the Block to Builder thing. So to now a soft skill set, to now how do I listen to what is being said to me by the project team? How do I assimilate that and then make sure that that's relevant when I replay it to them? How do I show them that I actually care about the output and how to get there, rather than I'm just going to walk in there and wave the no stick at them?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the beauties of the community. Like, whenever we have these roundtable discussions, it's great that so many different people with different experiences, from different walks of life, come in with different angles, different ways of seeing things. So it really enriches I suppose your current knowledge, your current experience, and suddenly makes you think outside the box sometimes and go, wow, I never thought, actually, certainly broadens the mind. Yes, definitely. You mentioned earlier on, and I thought it was an interesting topic when it came up the other day as well, I have to say, job title, and how title doesn't necessarily help the situation. So can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, well, if you're a DPO, the O bit stands for officer, which obviously relates to lots of other things that are normally embedded in law. So and so you're already on a bit of a back foot, I think, with that as your job title. And I've had lots of discussions again with Claire, who actually doesn't like the word protection in data protection. And because that in itself sounds like you're trying to stop people doing things with it and kind of guard it from use, which of course, yes, there is a whole heap of security and organizational measures and all sorts of other elements that we need to put in place, those guardrails. But again, data protection officer, like, right, this is kind of my data and I'm going to allow you to do it if I say so. And actually, I'm probably going to say no to you because I'm an officer and I'm just telling you, you must do as I say. Absolutely the opposite to that is what we are. So we kicked around a whole heap of different titles, like I love one that you mentioned earlier, like empathizer, but like enabler or other kind of much softer words, still data related. And maybe there's some merit in that. I don't know. Something for us to explore at a later date, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how easy it would be to have the titles change, let's say, from the company's perspective, and maybe some of the professionals themselves might prefer to keep their titles. But I do certainly feel that, when with the title of officer, manager, it does make somebody who's outside of that field, it almost takes you back to your childhood. You know what I mean? When your parents are there and you're like, they determine.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think maybe we could consider looking at softening the title slightly and making it feel that we're more there to help as opposed to there to direct or control. Yeah,
and you could continue that kind of like that topic alone could go on for a long time, because then you start looking at things like specialist. Well, okay, but then that suddenly again potentially separates you from everybody else.
More
because you're now the person to go to. You're the person that we've all got to go to for an answer. So I don't know. That's just one where that came up as a potential option, and then I think we talked around it, and then everybody sort of on the day we came around to the conclusion that that still, to a degree, kind of separates you from the group, so to speak. So I don't know. I'm sure there's much more discussion in there at some point.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I might actually throw it out on LinkedIn just out of curiosity to see what people's feeling is. Do they feel the same? If so, do they have any suggestions for better titles, let's say? But again, it's not. I don't think that's necessarily going to fix the situation, but it may be impacting.
No. But it's all part of that kind of isn't it, that we started the discussion with, where you're potentially, I know some of us are legally not able to change those titles because there's a requirement for us to be data protection officers, and so that's slightly more more complex. But for those that can, it's just one element potentially of this kind of PR armory that we put together to enhance the way we approach things, to kind of bring on our softer skills so that we embed ourselves into those project teams, and how we go about then providing training and awareness in a much more fluid monthly basis, rather than just the annual kind of, here's your hour and a half GDPR online training and please tick the box at the end to say you've understood, right?
You've mentioned that, the training and awareness. So we do understand that, training and awareness is not only as necessary, but it's also going to potentially really help us to bridge this gap. But it doesn't come without its challenges. So what would you say are the main challenges being faced when trying to it's not just about carrying out the training and awareness, but it's actually achieving that it be effective, that people actually resonate with it, that they take it in. As you say, it's not just about sitting, ticking the box. Yeah, I sat through that hour long of training, but I didn't take anything from it. But it's more about, did they actually learn? Are they going to put it into practice in their day-to-day basis? So what are the challenges? Why is this so difficult, let's say, to achieve?
I think companies still embrace the tick box exercise, and there is an overload of training as well, depending on your organization. So you've then got information security training, you've then got anti-money laundering, you've got anti-bribery, you've got, do you know what I mean? Depending on what sector you're working in, the list could go on. So it's almost then you need those departments to coordinate with each, determine what a training schedule and campaign actually looks like, and then make sure that it either supplements, depending on what elements of that would work together, but doesn't massively overlap. And I think there is this, January type like feel still that, right, it's a slow month, just back from holidays. Here's your annual refresher training, and then people just sort of spend the first a day in that first week sort of thing, just going through, like clicking the box. And that's got, again, part of the work that we need to do, I think, to drive that awareness, but make it constant and continuous, so that you're forming habit. You're not forming habit by just doing an annual 1 hour and 30-minute GDPR training program. That's just going to have the opposite effect to what you actually want. So, that's the way I'm looking to approach it. And then of course, if you want to measure the efficacy of that, you can start doing, as a privacy team, if you've got the resources to do it, start looking at how do you subtly internally audit that. So can you run just, samples of questions across people's understanding every quarter or something, and just try to gauge how well it's going. And that allows you then to actually be a bit more kind of agile in terms of switching that content up for the next quarter or the next 2 quarters, as an example. That's something I'm right now.
And you mentioned there about resources, and I know it's something that came up that is one of the challenges people face, not having the resources from the perspective of, the investment from the organization to actually invest in good training, let's say. Also the time resources, you mentioned, like, it's not a one-off. It has to actually be carried out more frequently. So therefore there's a time constraint. And then there's also the resources from the perspective of, to carry out a successful training program, let's say, you also need certain skills on knowing how to carry out a training program. As with an awareness program, there's an element of marketing in there, that, you know what I mean? So to really get people to engage, as you say, it's not about sitting them down and watching a video for half an hour. It's actually, okay, but what techniques can we use to actually get people involved, to get them to actually, really relate to this? So, like, have you any tip? And I know we said a whole other conversation is going to come out of this, because eventually we realize this is a bigger topic. So we are going to do another discussion where we'll delve deeper into, real techniques that would help from the training perspective, but just from a high level, from some of the ideas that came out the other day.
Well, I think, I mean, obviously some form of gamification definitely works. If you're able to do that, people respond to that, or seem to respond to that very well. I think also you need to think about, like you said, not a half-hour video every month, because people are just not going to buy into that. Really short videos that are just on a very specific topic that have got some form of engagement to them will resonate. And actually, weirdly, even if they're really bad, they also resonate. So I do remember having a conversation in a previous role with a couple of people who were saying, "Oh, not those videos. I hate those videos." And it's why does he do that? And why does he do that in the video? And I said, I think you just proved my point, right? Regardless of whether you enjoyed it or not, you've actually remembered exactly what the problem was, because it was annoying you so much. So it's already here.
No such thing as bad publicity, isn't that it? Because
there you go, right? Exactly. So I think, like you said, we'll delve into it in a different discussion at some point. But for me, short, directed, to the point, engaging content plus some form of gamification. Don't make the quizzes and the test's ridiculously long at the end because people won't do them, or they'll just try and skip through them, and just, you know, make it relatable. I think trying to make it relatable to what you do rather than just here is the law and this is what the law says you must do is not going to work for your organization. You've got to try and contextualize it as best you can, I think.
Yeah, when you say that, I think there's two aspects. So one, when you say make it relatable to what you do meaning on the one hand what the organization does, but also what
yes,
because
exactly, you know, that
to resonate with them on their day-to-day.
Yeah. If it doesn't relate to them or have any kind of context, it just becomes a switch off, almost no matter how short the video is, right? Unless, of course, it's bad publicity and it's really annoying, and they realise they've just got to do it. They'll still remember it, but that's a way of developing your training and awareness program for. That's all. That shouldn't be your basis.
And, you know, it's something, and I posted about it recently about, you know, different learning styles. So I know we've mentioned video a couple of times here, or gamification, but I think the reality of it is as well, everyone has a different, not everyone, but, you know, there are different learning styles. So doing one type of training is not going to work for everyone. So you do need to have a variety in your training program. It can't just be videos or just gamification, or
no,
it has to be a variety there in order to ensure that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a combination of lots of things. Some people do learn best by just reading. Obviously, other people by audio or visual. So make it a podcast style, for example, small short snippet that might work. You know, or provide, you know, with reasonable adjustments and accessibility requirements, you might need to provide all three to make sure that the message is viable for everybody to take on board. So don't just stop once you think you've, you know, all right, I've written my 4-minute presentation in PowerPoint, I'm done. No, how do you move that on to make sure that you get it to as many people and resonate with as many people as possible?
Yeah, and it kind of has to evolve as well. So you can't, it's not as simple as designing a privacy program and you've got 5 different activities and I would just roll it out again and again and again. On the one hand, okay, I know today people don't stay for as long in the same job anymore, but there are still people that could still be there in 5 or 10 years' time. So they're not going to want to repeat the same thing again and again. Also, this is an evolving space. Things change. So you're going to need to move with it. So it's not as straightforward. And I think that comes back to the time resources, because time and dedication has to be there to roll out the first training program, but then continue to evolve and improve on that. So yeah, there's certainly, I think it's a big job. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, it was interesting, some of the ideas that came out the other day. There's some quite clever ideas, I have to say, and I'm looking forward to delve deeper into them. But yeah, I think it's definitely a big topic to discuss at the moment, and share ideas, really, because, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge out there. People have done things that have worked, and then, you know, it's important to share them.
But yeah, absolutely. And I think just back to our, you know, PR as us as professionals in this space. Yeah, you also have the opportunity to put yourself in front of people, to provide them with short training sessions, very specific training sessions, depending on, you know, the type of activity that different departments might be undertaking. And you should use the opportunity to do that. Ideally in person, if it's feasible. If not, sessions like this. So at least they get to know you as an individual as well. And so you kind of remove that veneer of, I've got to go speak to Luke. Right? Hopefully no one feels like that. But if you do, please come and tell me and we can chat about it. But do you know what I mean? I think you've got to use yourself as part of that, and your team as part of that training and awareness program that you put together.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember that we are people first. So before you being, you know, a DPO or, you know, a chief privacy officer or whatever, and the other person before whatever role they are in, we're all people. And at the end of the day, when you relate well to somebody, you're more open to whatever it is they have to say. So I think we need, this is where it may sound trivial to talk about the soft skills, but I think they have an awful lot more weight and importance than we might give them credit for.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that was what was really evident in the conversation that we had. Yeah. You know, it did take me a little bit by surprise, because I think we probably all do it as in our profession, but don't really acknowledge probably quite how good at it some of us, how important it is in order for us to be relatable, and for us to then be able to provide the right advice in order to get the right outcome, both from our perspective, from a data protection perspective, but equally for the business perspective and the project's perspective, whatever is being undertaken.
Yeah, exactly. I'm conscious of time. Any final thoughts or anything, anything in particular that you took away from the session?
What a wonderful community we've got. That was one of the
you say all the right
things. Well, but it is. It's really heartening to see everyone kind of like really thinking about how to support each other and drive our necessity, as it's, because it will always now be a necessity. You just look at the growth of privacy legislation and regulations across the globe. They're becoming ever more complex, and therefore we need to support each other to make sure that if anyone needs someone to lean on or needs a question answered, we should be there to sort of help do that, because ultimately we're trying to, it's not actually ultimately about us, it's about protecting rights and freedoms, right? It's about protecting the individuals for whom that data is being processed, about whom that data is being processed. And so that for me is the crucial bit, and the bit I'm very, very glad for, in terms of where that noise is coming from.
I don't hear
just me. so those are my final thoughts. I think just be there to support each other. That's the key, and keep working on those soft skills. Those are the crucial ones by the sounds of things.
Cool. Thank you, Luke. And I have to say, likewise, just that you mentioned the support of the community, but the community is what it is thanks to people like you who are willing to dedicate some time and energy to support.
You say all the right things as well.
Yeah, we're on the right page. No, but genuinely, I really appreciate leading the roundtable the other day, and again, taking the time to meet with me again today. Really, really appreciate it. And as I said, I am looking forward to further discussions. So we did mention from our conversation, we mentioned, so 2 key conversations came out of it, which we will discuss over the coming months, and I do expect you to be involved. One was training and awareness, delving deeper into real insights and how we can do it. And the other was on, how to approach each individual department to get collaboration. So one thing is the general soft skills to build that relationship. And another thing is, okay, but talking to a specific department, how can we actually, really delve in there? So there are 2 key conversations we're going to be having over the next few months. So as I mentioned at the start, anybody who's not a member of our privacy community but would like to join and take part in, these conversations or other conversations like that, you can either reach out to me directly. There should be a link in the post, or you can also go onto our website, trustworks.io. And that's it. Thanks again, Luke. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thanks to everybody else who took the time to join us today. I hope to see you next time. Have a lovely
Cheers, everybody. Bye.